Ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of the Merdeka Award Trust, it is my great pleasure to welcome each and every one of you to the third edition of the 2024 Merdeka Award Talk Series. In today's discussion titled Leadership, Not Just a Title but a Lifestyle, we will explore how distinguished leaders are actively mentoring emerging talents, imparting invaluable lessons on navigating their journeys to success, aligning perfectly with our theme of leadership's crucial role in Malaysia's progress. Without further ado, I am honored to invite Ms. Karina Fauzi, the Secretary of the Merdeka Award Trust, to deliver the opening speech and to kickstart our event today. Please give a warm welcome to Ms. Karina Fauzi.
Sri Nazir Razak, Chairman of Ikhlas Capital, Dr. Firdausi Suffian, Chief Executive Officer of Invest Sabah, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh and salam sejahtera. On behalf of the Merdeka Award Trust, I warmly welcome you to the third Merdeka Award Talk Series for this year 2024. It is a pleasure to gather here as we explore the journeys of Malaysian leaders and how their achievements can inspire the next generation. A heartfelt thank you to Petronas Sabah and also Shell Sabah for their invaluable support. We are especially excited to host our first Merdeka Award Talk Series in Sabah, the land below the wind, with its iconic Mount Kinabalu, rich cultural heritage, and breathtaking landscape that provides an inspiring backdrop for our discussion today, embodying the spirit of resilience and excellence that we celebrate together. As we dive into today's topics, leadership not just a title but a lifestyle, let me first provide a brief overview of the Trust Fund. Established back in 2007 by Petronas and Shell, the Trust honors individuals and organizations that make significant contributions to Malaysia, focusing on leadership and positive change. To promote excellence, the Trust offers two signature programs, which is the Merdeka Award and also the Merdeka Award Grant for International Attachment. In 2023, we launched the Merdeka Award Talk Series to foster meaningful discussions on leadership among Malaysians. The Merdeka Award Talk Series brings together a community of leaders who inspire others by sharing their resilience, adaptability, and innovative strategies. This series embodies the Trust's core values by celebrating the dynamic interplay of leadership that drives true excellence and inspire transformative change. Through these engaging discussions, we aim to cultivate a culture of collaboration and continuous learning among Malaysians dedicated to making a positive impact in their respective fields. Today, we are very delighted to welcome our very own two distinguished speakers, Sri Nazir Razak and also Dr. Firdausi Suffian, who will share their invaluable insights with us. We are very pleased to have the talented Daphne Iking, yes, our own Sabahan lady, as our host and moderator, guiding us through what promises to be an enlightening and inspiring session. Before I hand the stage over to our hosts, I want to express again my sincere gratitude to each and every one of you for being here today. I hope this session will inspire us all to embrace greater capabilities and reach new heights together. Now let's begin the discussion. Daphne, the floor is yours, bah.
Ladies and gentlemen, today I want to dive into a concept that affects each and every one of us, which is leadership. It's something that we're constantly exposed to, be it in our career, our homes, within our community. And I'm going to ask you this: how often do we think about leadership as not just a title or a position? How often do we recognize it as leadership in our lifestyle? Leadership, ladies and gentlemen, is definitely a lifestyle, or I would like to think it is. It's not limited to the boardroom, the corner office, or a rank, or a title in organization. It's about embodying the values, the principles, and the actions that inspire others, not because of just the position that we hold or the title that we have, but it's just the way we are, and we're supposed to be inspiring others to do the same thing. So as we explore today's theme, leadership, not just a title, but a lifestyle, we're joined by two distinguished leaders whose insights are not just inspiring, but they walk the talk. And this is something that I'm really, really proud to have them both. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming Sri Nazir Razak, a visionary in the Malaysian banking industry and the chairman as well as the founding partner of Ikhlas Capital. So good to see you. You may choose your seat. And we're also honored to welcome Dr. Firdausi Suffian, the CEO of Invest Sabah, and as well as an advocate for sustainable development and regional growth. All right, now we're going to make this session very, kalau orang Sabah bilang santai-santai, kita chill-chill saja, but it's going to be very informative, and of course we're going to extract all the insights that we have from these two gentlemen. We're going to start off first with the background and professional journey in case there's some people who would like to know a little bit more about how the both of you got into this line of work and what motivates you to lead. Dr. Firdausi?
Okay. I started out as an academician.
Right.
I was in UITM. I know my colleague are there. Hi. All right. So I worked with UITM like 14 years, and then after that I was a deputy rector back then to look after academic affairs.
Mm-hmm.
I think during my time it was the most challenging one and the toughest one. Because when we have COVID-19, we have to change the entire academic structure and, go to digital, online. That was really tough. My colleague was there. She was with me as well during that time, right? And then after 14 years, and then I was a deputy director for 4 years, and I was given a chance to be seconded, all right? My colleague is there as well, Invest Sabah, my friend over there, right? So I was given a chance to be a CEO in Invest Sabah. So I'm a teacher, academician. Well, I teach at the same time. I assume a leadership role in university as well. So the practice of leading, and then teaching, and then now I'm in Invest Sabah. When you talk about everything about KPI, numbers, and really practical. So I kind of privileged to have that theory connecting with practical. And to me, in the end of the day, you cannot separate this because theory and practice is not mutually exclusive. It cannot be different.
Trying to apply what you preach.
Exactly.
But when the environment is a little bit tricky, that's where you find your challenge in trying to bulldoze through
exactly. I told Tan Sri just now, sometimes you hold, in the real business world, you hold a vegetarian policy but swimming with the sharks. And you are the meat, if you get that.
Tan Sri?
No, I don't get that.
You didn't get that?
No, I spent 30 years at CIMB, about 20 either as chairman or CEO. Then I retired in 2018, and now I run my own private equity firm in Singapore.
But you've always been quite a go-getter. You've always known. I remember reading your book and you were saying how you were a little bit disappointed when they didn't say that you'll be made CEO because you had all these plans for CIMB and they didn't. They didn't make it so easy. And well, your book said it, like sort of half-puffed about it, and eventually they gave in. So you've always wanted to be a leader. You've always wanted to lead.
Yeah. I mean, I think that the drive for leadership with me started during my school days. I always wanted to be captain of the team. And when I arrived at boarding school in the UK, I was 13 and I was the only colored guy in a house of 60. And my aspiration was in 4 years, I wanted to be head of this house.
Wow.
So I'm a bit like that. So when I joined CIMB in 1989, I looked around and said, maybe one day I can be CEO here. So I always had that aspiration and drive to want to get to the top. I'm not shy about it.
That's good for you. And no one here should be shy about wanting to chase their dreams and goals. So good for you. Of course, climbing that ladder to head towards the goal of being on top, there definitely was some challenges. What would be, you've got so many. What would be the biggest challenge that you had to face, and how did you overcome it?
Well, I mean, first of all, when I applied to join CIMB, they rejected me because, and they told me later, because they didn't believe that someone born with a silver spoon could work so hard. So then I spent the first 18 months trying to prove to everybody that I could do it. They rejected me, and I appealed and appealed, and I promised them, if you give me this job, I'm going to work like a dog. And like a dog, I did. Mm-hmm. I remember my first piece of work for my boss was a book this thick, submission to the authorities. And it was so bad, he took it, he whacked me on the head with it. And then I walked out the room. It was an open plan office with glass doors. So I walked out the room, everybody knew what just happened. You could hear a pin drop, but I swore that that would never happen to me again. So I made sure. So one is to earn the kind of right to be there. That was always a challenge. People always say, "Oh, you're born to privilege" and all that. But there's always another side to that story as well. I had to, fight the stereotype. I always say that I never get a, I never get a chance to give anyone a first impression, because I walk in the room, they already have an impression of me. Yeah, either I'm somebody's son or somebody's brother or something like that. So it's always about second impressions that I have to fight to deliver. And then, of course, as the rise to the top, it was about strategy. And I think I'd share this. If you have the aspiration, you got to think about the path. No one's going to sit down and say, "This is your path, please walk." It's about the path, and I figured it out that I needed to move around departments such that I gained the necessary experiences across the organization. So by the time they were looking for a deputy CEO, I was the only one who actually had that varied range of experiences in CIMB. Right. So that's why they made me deputy CEO at the time.
And what about you, Dr. Firdausi? I know you have plans for Sabah. And one of the things that you constantly say is you don't want Sabahans or Sabah government to be relying so much on palm oil and the gas or oil and gas industry. What are some of the challenges that you face in your ambitions or your career or your life work-wise? And what have you done to overcome those barriers?
When I first joined Invest Sabah, I think that is one of the most challenging part of my life, leading an investment company. Because just so everybody know, Invest Sabah is very new, because all this investment promotion agency in most of the states is quite new. So when I joined, I really it was really challenging, because a lot of people put a lot of expectation. Right? A lot of people think that, you cannot do it. A lot of people think that, are you sure this guy from university can do it?
So they doubted your credibility?
You will have that kind of vibe. People will look at you. Are you sure?
What does he know?
Yes.
Right.
What he knows, Mm-hmm. So even though I teach economics, political economy, now I'm talking about investments. This is the real thing. What I do is also real thing too, when it comes to numbers. So, So when I went in, and then the company is rather new, I really, really want to make a change. So thanks to my previous experience, so my learning curve is different, right? Some people start from zero, some people start from 20, 40%. Well, thank God, my probably mine would be around 60+% of learning curve. So when I went in, when I see Sabah, because I really have a dream what an investment company all about. I read, and then I look at data. I look at the people in Invest Sabah, right? Because when you are...
What is that dream, Dr. Firdausi? What is that ultimate dream of you for Sabah?
Ultimate dream of Sabah is That is a very good question.
Or do you want to skip that and just mull
Hang
over
on,
it?
before I go to that dream, let me just tell you those
Please.
challenges. So this is one of the things that I do. When I went in Invest Sabah, so I set a new vision. I draft the vision of Invest Sabah. And I draft the mission as well.
Okay.
And then I came up with the strategic trusts. I came out with the value of the company. I came out with the key performance index of the company. But all this is easy, to be honest, not with ChatGPT. No. I mean, with all the readings and what you want to be, looking at those challenges that what we have in Sabah, because in Invest Sabah we have this vision where we want to make a transformation and also structural change. We don't want to rely on resources.
Yep.
We don't want to rely, resources, yes, but we want to expand our downstream. We have this national industrialization master plan talking about economic complexity, because back of my head, development without sophistication merely is just an illusion.
Okay.
What does it mean? Meaning if you just export palm oil, export oil, something that just export resources, statistically amazing. It'll show you investment is good, income is good. But people of Sabah, when it comes to the real development, you really want to feel structural change is to expand the downstream. So in Invest Sabah, I told my colleague, because the first thing that you need is to build the trust with the people within. You cannot, I came up with vision, mission, all the strategic trust, KPI, and values. But the thing that I want them to do, I did, is to build the trust. Because if you don't have trust, people wouldn't believe what you believe.
So your challenge would be to buy in trust from everyone.
Exactly.
To
Building
make
the
that
trust.
shift, mindset.
Yeah, by building the trust is also tell them what is the vision that you want. And this vision must be a just cause. It must be purposeful. Back then when, in Malaysia back then, Tunku Abdul Rahman, Tun Razak back then, the purpose is about unifying the people, developing the country, and the purpose is very clear. The same thing that I show this purpose to my staff, and I build the trust, which today, thank God, they trust my vision and mission and all the strategic trusts and the KPI they were given to them. And they work, now they know where to go, what to do.
So his challenge was actually to gain the trust, make sure that they get the buy-in, and then what you did was basically to just go through it, just have to do it, and you managed to overcome that challenge. Am I correct? All right. So what are some of the non-negotiables? I know both of you have very high values when it comes to work, your career, everything that you do in life. But what are some of the non-negotiable values that you say, nope, I need to be able to do this. I'm just going to go ahead with this despite the fact that everything's against me. What would it be and why? It can be as simple as like my non-negotiable is I have to work out in the morning. But in terms of values, what would it be?
I think when I remember building out my career, I think the most important thing in a leader is, as you say, trust. The people must look up and trust the leader in that. They must never second guess what his agenda is, right? And that's one thing I was very focused on at CIMB, that at that time, within these four walls, a lot of Malaysian corporations were pretty corrupt. And at that time, this was sort of early 90s and so on. And, I felt that it was very important that we ran a straight ship, that everybody knew that if we approved a loan, it was because the borrower merited that approval. Yeah. And two is, when I promised my people that, okay, if you guys perform at year end, I will compensate you accordingly. I will give you this much. And when they perform, you have to deliver. And then your reputation builds, right? That people say, okay, when he says he will deliver, he will deliver. And then people start accepting and following you. That's very important. And I think I look back, and a lot of people at the firm felt that it was a place that they could work where there's complete alignment. And then there was also a place where when the boss says, this is the way it is, he will make sure it is the way it is. And related to that is for CEOs, you must have a good handle of your boards. Because, if you want to deliver for your people, you must be able to convince your board. If you promise people and then they expect, and then your board says no, you're the one who's going to look like you let down your people. So managing boards is very important.
Wow, that's a different skill set altogether.
But it's very important. As a CEO, you must have faith in your board. You must build the trust with your board.
Right.
Yeah. And in GLC situations, you must be careful your board's not so political.
We had a big discussion about this during lunch. Dr. Firdausi, what are some of your non-negotiables?
First of all, I could not agree more to manage your board. Anyway, something that's not negotiable. I've been thinking about that. If yours is you must work out in the morning.
Yeah, but that's something, an activity. But in terms of values or whatever.
I just want to share is that I must have a coffee.
Okay.
If someone say, let's go, and then if I didn't have my coffee, even if I'm late, I don't care. I must have coffee first. Right? Anyway, so something that when I set something is if I see already in my head, in my mind, say if I want to do A, all right? I want to change. I want to do something. If I already set my mind and I have all my case right, if I have all my data right, I have my evidence right, I think I don't care. I will do it no matter what. I will really push and I will make sure people buy in. And I will make sure I can deliver that idea if I already set my mind. I think what Tan Sri did was, during his CIMB time, he did a lot of transformation, buying all, banks, Bank Niaga, Lipo, even in Scotland. He has a vision and he set that vision and he built that trust, right? Sorry, I read your book, by the way. So I know you
really good book. You guys have to read it.
I read Tan Sri book. You should. Most of you should. I think most of you can.
But that's just a thing with leadership. So as leaders, it's great when we have our vision, we've got our goals, and we're driven, and we know we're right because we've done enough research. But at the same time, there's also that check and balance, if you may add, or may say, where are you always correct? When are you able to sort of give some flexibility and somebody comes, I'm just going to point out to Afiq just because Afiq, you're right in front of me. Afiq's going to say, sorry, boss. Sorry, boss. That's his PA, by the way. He says, sorry, boss, I think you're wrong. When do you then step back and say, yeah, you're right? Or are you going to still be driven to go ahead and go all the way? Tan Sri?
Well, one of the things I used to say to the team was, to me, loyalty is to tell me when I'm wrong.
What? Betul Afiq cakap?
Disloyalty is basically to say, yes, sir, even though you know I'm wrong. And that actually is very important culture in any organization. Frankly, if you work in an organization where the boss expects you to just angguk and jalan, then I'd resign if I were you, because that's not good culture. Good culture is someone stands up and says to the boss, look, you're wrong. And then the boss says, no, I'm right. And then you argue.
All right.
You argue and come up with a decision, then you run with that decision.
Because we're talking about lifestyle, so bukan di kerja sahaja. So how would someone who is who needs to tell something difficult, to have a crucial conversation with their bosses or their leaders, how would it be easier for leaders to accept? What would you like to hear from us when we're saying, I don't think he's making the right decision? How would you want us to be telling you?
In English or Malay?
Astaghfirullahalazim. Isn't there like any code? Like, is there
I
any?
think what's important,
You know what I mean?
Okay, I'll share with you this. Like, to set the culture of the organization.
Right.
When I first took over Bank Bumi, I went on a roadshow in room 300 people, whatever. I went to a roadshow in Kuala Terengganu. So I gave them the talk and I said, look, at the end, you ask me any question you want.
Okay.
So they asked me 3 questions. Okay. Then I answered the 3 questions and I went to Kuantan. And I went to Kuantan, I gave a talk, and then I said, any questions? They asked me 3 questions. And guess what? They were exactly the same
Oh my God, I
questions.
was just going to ask that. It was the same 3 questions.
Same 3 questions. So basically, the culture in Bank Bumi had been, basically, you only ask questions that you're told to ask. And on the spot there, I lost my temper on stage completely. I just said, this is just a disastrous organization. Any organization that has that culture where you shoot your staff, or you shoot the messenger, or you hate talking about difficult things, is a very dangerous organization, because people will hide things under the table, right? They
So
won't
just say
speak
it
up.
as it is. If we have
So
something.
as a leader, you must have the right reference narratives.
Okay.
Reference narrative is the things that people remember about you. And one of the reference narratives about me is I wouldn't tolerate that kind of behavior where you suppress people's voices in any organization. It's very, very dangerous.
Dr. Firdausi, any thoughts about that?
Well, if we talk about thought leadership, you see, it's based on experience, based on data, based on knowledge, observation. Now, if people say no to you, it's not just simply just a no. For instance, you want to do A. No. Why? You must explain, right? I think that's a very important point, because you as a leader, your follower as well, or your staff, when they want to say no, they have to say the reason is number A, B, C, D. And you as a leader, of course, you have to make sense as well. You have got to make sense whether or not, well, you have that vision. Of course, the pathway can be different to achieve that, because it is based on your team as well. After all, you cannot just simply yourself alone to bring the entire organization to wherever destination that you want, because the journey itself is the destination, and the journey is to understand and listen to people. So, and this is very important. I think a lot of people, most leaders are like that. A good one, unless you are authoritarian in it. Even authoritarian also listen to some of his advisor, So it's important to listen to other people. You got to listen to your people, because sometimes they might probably have a better idea that you didn't see, right? So they can tell you, of course, with evidence, so, of course, with logical way explaining it. And after all, because if you don't let that conversation to have, you don't have that feedback loop in organizing, you're already defeating leading at the first place, because the way to progress in organization is always to have an effective feedback loop with your HOD.
Since you mentioned effective feedback, we also have a very diverse group of audience here. And some people have, we've got a generational gap that we need to bridge, because they have different styles of thinking, communicating. My daughter barely talks to me. I've got WhatsApp on her, but she's like talking to me over Instagram. I don't know why, but that's just how it is. How do we bridge that generational gap in order for effective communication to happen within a corporate? Because, orang tua-tua, my father said, no one will ever speak to me that way. And then we've got the youth who says like, kalau I tak menceritakan benda ni, mental health. They've got everything's mental. Gelak, betul kan? Mental health, tak boleh, cannot come to work already. So where do we strike that balance, and how do we bridge that generation? I know I sort of like went all the way because we were talking about that. Yes. Anyone else wants to just add?
So one of the things that I proposed and cannot get enough traction is this, that I think that, just as we encourage that 30% of boards are women, we should also encourage that a certain fraction of every board includes members of the youth, the young. It's okay. You can get a 28-year-old to serve for 2 years and then roll it, right? But it's very, very important because the distance between me and my kids versus me and my father is so much greater today. And if you have these young people on the board can learn from them and they can learn from the board. What's wrong with it? Yeah, I think, Petronas should start to take the lead on this.
Dr. Firdausi, anything else you want to add on that?
Yeah, of course, when you want to drive change or you want to achieve something, because in your organization, it's quite diverse in terms of demography as well. So when it comes to younger generation, a lot of young people in my organization.
Oh, you're still young.
Oh, yes, thank you. And then we have 31 staff, and then 28 of them are female.
Right.
So there's only selected male in my office, all right? Most of them are women, all right? Now, and young as well. So if you remember, Soeharto used to say that, Soekarno used to say that, beri saya 10 orang muda, nescaya aku goncang dunia, right? Because the reason is very simple. For any economy to grow, for any organization to grow, you really need the younger generation. And they must understand where they're heading. Because young people are full with compulsion, drive, motivation, determination. But that drive, that spirit must be instilled with a purpose, a vision. And usually leader, because we talk about wisdom, all right? And knowledge. Knowledge is books, information, all this paper. ChatGPT can give you knowledge as well, but people give you wisdom. So the younger generation should understand the older generation who has went through certain thing to understand wisdom.
There's a wealth of experience.
Yes. Wealth of experience give you wisdom, and wisdom give you the purpose. Purpose give you that character to drive your determination. So therefore, the younger generation, is important to have them, to understand them, to be part of the decision as well, so that they understand wisdom, how to drive or to change an organization to a greater height.
Wow, very philosophical, but love it. Okay, are leaders born or made? What do you think? He's like, oh, what a cliche question, Daphne, but I have to ask. I want to hear it from the horses now.
Both.
Okay.
Both. I think to some extent you're born, and you look. You are handed a deck of cards when you're born, and you just got to do the best that you can with them, right? So you have a certain degree of maybe leadership traits, but if you don't groom it, you won't become a great leader. If you're short of it and you don't learn to make up for the shortage, you won't be a great leader. So I think it's a combination of both.
And I guess we do need a combination of leaders and followers, for the lack of a better word. Because I see my kids and I'm like, oh, ni dah. Tapi ni. Bukan tak kurang, tak baik kan. But yeah, you can sort of see the character. But at the same time, it's possible that if given the ample opportunity, exposure, they can be made into leaders in their own minds.
I think, everyone can lead at some level.
And definitely we can lead through our lifestyle. It's as simple as that. When we talk about it, let's just get back to the topic. If we're talking about leadership in our lifestyle, what should it be? The nitty-gritty part, like what would it be if we're talking about lifestyle-wise? What could be the first thing we change in being a leader in our lifestyle?
Well, if you really want to delve into the wordings, then it's really about to what extent you have behavioral traits in everything that you do. And, it's true that one of the problems with a lot of organizations is people who do well in their jobs expect to be the leader. And so many people are good at their jobs but are lousy leaders. That's always a problem with the organization, right? And so actually some of the best decisions I made is actually where I've told people that, look, hey, you are really good at your job, but I cannot promote you. Because if I promote you, I'll be doing a disservice to you. So when someone is a leader, then they must display leadership traits to the organization, but to the people below them, but also live as a leader in general. right? And because you're not just a leader when you're with them, you're not just leader when you're in the office, you're a leader general. People look up to you.
Dr. Firdausi?
Can I add something? Whether it's born or made, there's a saying say that if you have talent but no discipline, it's equal zero. If you have talent but you have bad attitude, it's equal zero. So attitude and discipline are basically is a conscious choice that you have to make. So whether you are born or not, but if you have what I think leader is not the lifestyle, it should be way of life. Because when you want to be a leader, you must have discipline. You must have that attitude of looking for knowledge, talk to people, people-centered. You must have that sense of empathy as well. And then you must be, have certain vision in your head, what you can do. And all this is a value of a leader. And if you want to lead, of course, you must have that discipline. And that discipline that actually built you to be a leader. Because otherwise, if you don't have a discipline, for instance, like, simple things like you don't really care, take things, couldn't care less of things. You don't have discipline, then so what if you are, with a great orator, I don't know what sort of talent that you have, but if you don't have discipline, then it's equal zero. Sometimes it's important to test someone if you believe in them, if they really have that character, if they really have that discipline, if they really have that good, right attitude to do it, then it's okay sometimes to push someone, right, to be in the front, to test them whether they are good or not.
That's my point. You have to judge. Some people can do it. Some people can't.
All right, let's take a look at, I actually just jumped about here. Mentorship. I know the boss that actually threw that huge heavy book, what's his name? Steve? Was it Steve? Yes? Steve, right? Oh, yes. And in a way, he sort of really drilled you to do what you had to do. You worked really long hours. But he was not your mentor. No. Who was your mentor?
Well, I think in corporate world, my mentor, Tan Sri Magno Yusof.
Yes. Why?
Well, he happened to be the CEO, group CEO at that time. That's one. And two, we built a good working relationship. And I remember he's got this great foresight. And I remember one day he told me, I don't know why, we're just chatting. And he goes, this was in the early 90s. He said, Nazir, if you go to my house, I can account for every piece of furniture in that house. Right? So I couldn't work it out for a bit. Then I realized what he was telling me is that all his friends are very rich and successful and all that, but they probably can't account for what they have. Whereas he is very proud because he has made all that money, all the money he had, honestly. And he was telling me about the value of integrity.
And I think that's something that really strikes a chord for you because of the legacy of your dad, who's always been very frugal, who's very mindful, and had a reputation to, make sure that we don't spend unnecessarily for ourselves, for the family. There was a story, can I just quickly share this? There was a story where the brothers, rounded up the father, had a proposal to get a swimming pool done. Dia okay, dia kecil. So dia main dekat tepi lah, the kolam. Kejap lah, sabar. Cakap sabar dulu. So dorang ada kolam kan, and he was quite happy just swimming at the kolam area. But you two joined your brothers to set up the proposal to your dad saying, we want a swimming pool here. Am I correct? Yeah. And he said?
He was very angry. He said, we don't spend public money that way.
So that was the sort of father that he grew up with. That was the leader that we had before. Dr. Firdausi, how about you? Who would your mentor be and why?
I got to be honest, I really don't have a mentor.
Okay.
Like a specific one that I will really, stick to. Because I always believe that mentorship is not just people, but it's knowledge to me.
Okay.
And people give you wisdom. I always believe that by talking to, just have a short conversation with Tan Sri, there are a few things that they can pick up. And by reading his book, What's in the Name, what he's written, and by talking, it gives you that wisdom. Now, to me, for most leader, it's important to have mentor. It depends on how you see things, because the way how I see things is completely different. Because I always believe that people, like leader, there's a lot of them, they can give you a lot of wisdom, and you need to talk to them.
So you've got a lot of mentors, but you don't have like one specific one.
I don't have one
not at
specific
all.
one that I really adore or really,
Right.
stick to his,
Fair enough.
philosophy.
Do you mentor anyone, or are you currently mentoring somebody?
I do, but
Okay.
I don't know whether they treat me. I don't know whether they think like me. All right, my organization, I do have the people that I'm mentoring right
Right.
now, but I always tell them that, look, in the end of the day, it's you,
Mm-hmm.
because you got to read, you got to get that knowledge, you got to seek that things that you really want. I'm here just to give you that wisdom, because I can be doing things not in the right way, right? So to me, in the end of the day, it's always, I like to talk to great people. I like to talk to people, and from there I can get a lot of wisdom, and of course, not forgetting getting a lot of knowledge by reading, understanding, observe. All this I think matters when it comes to mentorship.
Very different answer that I got from him. Unique. Normally somebody always has a name that they'll bring up, but that's quite a different answer. All right, gentlemen, let me just double check, because I did see Nadia. Yeah, we've got how many more minutes? No more? Sorry, the lights are... Sheila, how are we doing? One more question. Wow, okay. Got a whole list here. Don't worry, you guys get to ask all your questions now. So what's moving forward? Tan Sri, understand that next week you will be launching a new book, something that's quite exciting. You are the chairman, correct, of the Yayasan Tun Razak. Perhaps just share with the audience what's that all about, and you're writing one chapter, if I'm not mistaken, or you've contributed one chapter in that book.
Oh, actually, it's a fun book. There's 12 of us, I think, wrote a chapter each on imagining Malaysia's future through Tun Razak's lenses. And I found it very interesting to write my chapter, which is on the evolution of Malaysian democracy. So did we evolve the way that he envisaged? So different people are writing different aspects, like on nation building and so on and so on, basically based on his writings and his policies and all that, what we understand of it, and looking at Malaysia today and going forwards. So it's actually a very, very interesting, it's a very different take on his legacy. Because, I actually think that I was referred to Tun Razak as the master builder of the nation. And I'm always very clear to point out that knowing him as I've researched him, he would be the first to want us to analyze critically his legacy. What did he do right and what did he do wrong? Not to apportion blame, but for us to make the nation better, right? So I've said things like, okay, he designed the new economic policy. It was much needed for the nation to rebalance wealth between ethnic groups, etc. But when he did that, which is more government and so on and so forth, he did not implement sufficient guardrails against corruption, right? For instance, so that's the kind of critical analysis of his legacy that we're trying to bring up in this book.
Dr. Firdausi, you are big on the blue economy of late. What's the latest status now, and what's the update with regards to that?
Okay. All right. Thank you. When we see blue economy is one of those narratives that the state came out with, because the state must have a new policy. We have the Sabah Maju Jaya policy. And then, of course, I know a lot of people talk about Sabah Maju in a good way and a very positive way as well. Everybody knows what is Sabah Maju Jaya policy, right? Sabah Maju Jaya is well communicated. Everybody knows that. Okay?
Are you?
Yeah. And
Okay.
I mean,
Just making sure.
in a
Okay.
positive way and a very negative way as well.
Okay.
Right? Now, but of course, the state must come out with a policy too for structural change.
Right.
So picking the idea from Tan Sri just now, we must have a structural change. And then I think what NEPs, I think I pro NEP since it was founded. But of course, like what Tan Sri said, along the way, things, so much vested interest. So for blue economy right now, is that the government wants to package a new renewable and sustainable aspect of economic development in the state, because Sabah, which will reach resources, right? And all this narrative when we talk about net zero 2050, ESG, sustainability, Paris Agreement that came out with putting importance of sustainability. So the state actually embraced that. And of course, with the SDG for 17 goals, so we embraced this. And then the state came out with blue economy by emphasizing, because Sabah, the marine economy contribute like what? 1/4 of the GDP, number one. Number two, the size of the sea is big.
Yep.
All right. If you look at the 200 nautical, nautical miles, right? So from blue economy, I think everybody was thinking, what is that, right? Basically, we're incorporating the idea of sustainability, because people now talk about renewable energy.
Yep.
So under the blue economy, the state government came out with the ocean thermal energy conversion, because we know in Sabah, we have energy problem, all right? I don't want to look at them, but it's true. We have energy problem, yeah? But in terms of total mix of energy, it's still pretty much natural gas and diesel.
Right.
So we need to increase in terms of renewable. So blue economy, along with sustainable aspect, among other things, is the ocean thermal conversion, energy conversion. And at the same time, the key of blue economy is about inclusivity.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much for summing that up with regards to your blue economy. Ladies and gentlemen, it is now time for us to hear from you. If you have any questions, please raise your hands. We have microphones in the middle. We've got 1 and 2 here in the middle. So please feel free to put your hands up if you aren't able to go to the mic, and we can bring it to you. Okay, here you go. Sorry, the spotlight's a little bit high. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Okay, I have 2 questions. My first question is to Dr. Firdaus. Before that, my name is Roslan. I'm from Persatuan Masyarakat Ihsan Sabah. Okay, my first question, Dr. Firdaus did mention about centralized and decentralized of the system. But the system is only a tools. Whether it's centralized or decentralized, it boils down to leadership itself. So my question is, what are the criteria of leadership for Malaysia to bring Malaysia to a greater height? That's my first question.
Oh, wow. Okay.
My second question is to yang berbahagia Tan Sri Nizar. Selamat datang ke Sabah. Sudah naik gunung Tan Sri?
Dulu sudah.
Okay. I want to make a comparison between Malaysia and Singapore. In terms of produce a leadership. We can see that in Singapore, it's predictable, the transition of leadership. And they bring up the best of the Singaporean to lead Singapore. Unlike Malaysia, maybe we have a different culture and politics. So maybe Tan Sri Nizar can have that opinion on this with our neighbor. Thank you.
So, okay. Decentralization and centralization, and it boils down to leadership. Of course, it's obvious, because leadership is everything. But it's also important to look at system as well. Sometimes you have a good leader. I just give you an example. Sometimes, if you don't have a good system, right? I like this book from Ha Jung Chang, a very famous economist who came here last year in Megatrend, Hazana Megatrend. He gave a very good example. I think he hits everything. He said, sometimes if you bring someone, if you put, he's so good, talented, disciplined, have all the characteristic of excellent. But if this jockey you put in a donkey, all right, no matter how good you are, is that donkey speed, right? But if you put this person, even if he's not, he doesn't have the right attitude, right skill or right knowledge, but if you put in the system that have a proper horse run, like good horse, he will move very quickly. So the same thing in country, system matters, but system and leadership is not mutually exclusive. Leader have to in place that system. Power is centralized to Prime Minister. We could not agree more, but someone have to make that choice to decentralize the power. Franklin Roosevelt won 3 times election, right? But he go to the parliament, to the Congress, and tell them, look, we only need 2 terms. That's it. So, because now it's U.S. election, right? So, bringing a bit of U.S. mood. Right? Franklin Roosevelt make a choice, even though it was just a convention since Washington time. But they make a choice, put it in the Constitution, and make it legalized. Then you only have 2 terms. Now, what sort of leader do we need? Now, let me just give you an example. We need a bold leadership. We need really a person that have vision and also trust. I think these 3 things is very important. Above all, you need really courageous leader and purposeful as well. Back in the 80s, Sabah GDP growth rate was 14%. Nobody can beat that, not even Malaysia GDP. You can interpret who is that at the time, so in the 80s. But things changes over time, all right? When the federal started to flex the muscle, and then flex the muscle, then it started to stifle a lot of things. It's not just Sabah and Sarawak. But to me, a leader for a country, you must have these 3. Courageous, and then you must have a just cause, a purpose, and also, last but not least, you must have the trust of the people. Then you can grow. A good example, I think, great leader like, I think you guys might probably don't realize that, General Park, he was an authoritarian who transformed LG, transformed Samsung, transformed Hyundai. And today, everybody knows Korean product.
Thank you, Doctor. And your answer for Roslan?
No, I think the Singapore story, you can't run away from great leadership. I think Lee Kuan Yew was a great leader. I think I've met him. He's not a nice guy, but he was a great leader. And one of the things that he stamped out early on was corruption. I don't know if you know, but in the 60s, late 60s, one of his best friends was the Minister of Health, and he got investigated for corruption, and they were about to charge him. And it was his best friend, one of his best friends. Lee Kuan Yew called him and said, "You must do what's right for this nation." Next day, the guy committed suicide.
Oh dear Lord. Yep.
And that is the kind of toughness that Kuan Yew had for dealing with corruption. And of course, the PAP, the way he ran the political party also was incredible. I mean, they have managed to maintain democracy to some extent. And of course, the early days, they played hardball with democracy. But PAP became dominant. And they used the party to basically create good leaders, right? They would actually, I have a good friend who's an ophthalmologist, and then one day he got called up and said, "Okay, you've been a good ophthalmologist. We've been monitoring you. Now it's time for you to go to government." And today he's the foreign minister of Singapore. So they really and the party just chose him, put him there, and the electorate trust the party so much. Yeah, and the problem now in our system is you had a period under Mahathir where basically the civil service was severely weakened. in favor of politicians and the private sector. And then there's a failure of UMNO, essentially, to produce good leaders. So you had a dysfunction in the civil service and you had dysfunction in the political parties. So in the end of the day, we've ended up, one of our problems is actually we're not getting good leaders in the right place. Many people in my generation, very, very talented people, looked at the state of politics and said, tak apalah, I go to do business.
Thank you, Mr. Roslat. Okay, we've got the gentleman over here. Hi.
Hello. Thank you for the wonderful insights. My name is Fauzan. I'm from IDS. I got two questions actually. Not sponsored by ChatGPT, okay? So it's actually just inspired by Ray Dalio's approach to radical transparency for his company success. So addressing the generational gap and structural changes. First one is how can leaders evolve from a strict to a more santai kind of, like leadership style? So number two, so talk about inclusivity. So beyond inclusivity such as age, gender, so what kind of system of principles would you put in place to foster transparency, to break favoritism, and build a productive and a more meaningful environment in your organization? Thank you.
Thank you, Fauzan. So let me just see if I summarize it well. Okay, this radical transparency, that was what your question was, Fauzan? Yep. And the other one was, how do you get to lead without being too strict to something a little bit more santai and to change the industry system? Was that industries? Yes. Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's what sorts of system of principles that you would put in place in your organization, for example, to break favoritism, to foster transparency. Yeah. So I quoted Ray Dalio's approach, where he implement his radical transparency, kind of like a system of principle in his organization that made his company a successful one. So do you get my question?
This is Ray Dalio of Bridgewater?
Yes, that's the one.
Okay. Gentlemen? Tan Sri?
I think if you want to be 1 minute you're strict, next minute you're santai. I think that transition, you got to be sure that that's what the organization needs. And keduanya, I always operated on this principle of, man in the mirror. Remember that Michael Jackson song? So I used to always look in the mirror and say, am I the right person for this job? Still, right? And at some point, I went to the mirror in 2014 and said, am I the right person for this job? And the mirror said no, right? So then I retired because, I felt that at that time, maybe the organization needed a new leader. Yeah, one of the issues was the organization needed to do quite massive change, and you would have to unwind things that I built. And it's very difficult because then I get emotional ties to the past and all that like that. So I felt that it was time for me to vacate. So I handed over to Tengku Zafrul then in 2014 because of that. So this kind of, you look at the organization, what does it need? Cannot be so dictatorial and all that. Then maybe I don't know how to change enough. So then you go hand over to someone because, no one is indispensable. The next one, I'm not sure how to answer that because I think that, I think those principles that you put out are essential to any organization, right? And organizations should strive for transparency, inclusiveness, etc. And I think, of course, those kind of principles over time have evolved. I remember those days when we were very reluctant to hire ladies. But now, we're chasing ladies in the right way, you're saying. So It's an evolution.
What was that reason that you were reluctant to hire women in the force?
No, because at that time, we were biased against women. I mean, I'll be honest.
At least he's honest.
Yeah. Because, we thought that, okay, after a few years, then they have to take off, have children, that kind of thing, and then be disruptive to clients and all that. It was completely wrong thinking. But this was in the late 80s, early 90s. It wasn't me, it was my boss.
Do you want to add in on anything, Doctor?
Yeah, I think it is related purely on cultural change. Because you talk about favoritism and patronage. I think this is partly, very important that we have to make that conscious choice to actually break that barrier. I think, Tan Sri's talk show, GOI, Game of Impossible, right? We have to make it possible, when it comes to patronage, based on people that in organization, not really transparent. Is that what I got it, right? Favoritism, right? I think this is really is really disastrous in many ways. I think we have witnessed that. I think some of the, what we practices, some of those companies that practices favoritism, patronage would definitely end into a very disastrous way. So to me, the choice is really the leader have to stop it. Just like you if it's favoritism there, so you got to make that conscious choice to actually break it. If
Or you can make a report. You can lodge a report.
You can't do report in sometimes sometimes this. You got to make that choice to break it. It's not there, and then when you up there, you say, for me, just like what Tan Sri said, I just want to reiterate the moment when you go up there and then you realize that, wow, this is a good place to stay using favoritism, and I want to continue this system of favoritism. See, at first you want to break the system, but when you're up there,
it's hard.
You realize that, wow, this is nice.
It's intoxicating.
This is how
Feels
it works.
Good. So don't get there, guys. Panjang cerita, pendekkan cerita, don't get there, okay? Find someone that will be able to say, nope, you're getting too much. Get someone to, you must have that sort of friend that just slaps you in the face and say, hey, ni dah biar dah. You really need a sort of friend like that. Do we have any more questions? Sheila, is it? Okay. Is that? Yep. We've got a question here.
So question for Tan Sri actually. Over here, Tan Sri. Having been in a position, I think, of privilege, when I say privilege, as CEO of a large investment bank, you must have dealt with a number of leaders from the NGO sector or the civil society sector. Where have you seen gaps? Has there been any NGO leader that has inspired you? What were some of those qualities that those leaders displayed? And now, as chairman of Yayasan Tun Razak, what would you say to be important qualities of a leader in that position, of a foundation / NGO?
Well, I think that, NGOs obviously perform an incredibly important role in society. And, I take my hat off to anyone who does well running an NGO because it's difficult. I'm used to organizations where, we get paid, we do well, we get paid more, and so on and so forth. Whereas, in NGO, you're passionately driven by the impact that you deliver. And I think that, I've seen a number, and I guess the contrast is those that are doing the job versus those that are, essentially living the job, really, really want to create impact in whatever they are targeted to do. I mean, my sister-in-law is 24/7 helping children in largely here in stateless children in Sabah, and she impresses me every time I see her. She ran the childcare Yayasan Chowkit. But now, I don't really know what organization she lives, she works, but 24/7, she's literally given her number out to all the stateless mothers, and they can just call her, ask her for money. And if I put any money in her bank account, it just goes straight out. That's the kind of drive and passion that impresses me in people who run NGOs. And of course, when you are a donor, when the CEO, the leader of the NGO, kind of gives off that kind of commitment, then you have no choice but to give money.
There are many NGOs here. Is it good for us to work in silos or not? Silos, should we work? Because I see that there are a lot of people, for instance, there's a lot of NGOs helping the animals, and then it's all of them are scattered around. Should they just come together? For instance, for NGOs here, how you've got a couple of them here, or should they remain in the NGOs because then it'll be a healthier competition, per se? What are your thoughts on that?
I cannot generalize. In the end of the day, sometimes situation needs more focus. Sometimes situation needs economies of scale. But I think all of NGOs should generally share knowledge and experiences to help one another.
All right, we've got one question from this side of the hall. Thank you so much, Doctor. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much.
Hi.
Hi. Thank you very much, Tan Sri and Dr. Firdausi, for a very inspiring session. My name is Razi Pahlavi Abdulaziz. I'm CEO from Amani Care Foundation, mainly focusing on rural children welfare and development. So I have two direct questions, I promise. Okay. Question number one is to Dr. Firdausi. I will start first with this question before I move to Tan Sri. In our experience or in my experience developing program, especially in Sabah, okay, we face a challenge of access to data because our approach before we can design any kind of program for development or intervention, we look into the problem statement. To establish the problem statement, we need to find data. So I myself, I go straight to get the first primary data, go to the rural area just to get the data. But it is a long journey to attain the data before we can even design the program. So my question to you, if you can advise or if you have the power to improve on the data management, of course, this can also be applied to any kind of investment into Sabah, not only on the social programs like what I'm doing, but essentially it is a data management. We feel, or I feel, it is still lacking, especially in this state. And how can we improve, or how can we work together to improve that? Okay, I move to the second question before I forget. Dear Tan Sri, okay, what is your advice to a younger leader, a younger generation of leaders who are now facing with an overflowing of data and information? We are still talking about technology, data, information. Now we have all the tools, okay, and these tools beyond human mind, okay. But as a leader, how we can capitalize? What is your advice on how we can leverage and capitalize these tools to make the right decision? Okay, I think the best invention in this world is the tool to let the leaders or the CEOs or the managing directors of a corporation or any company or even the ministers to make the right decision. Because at the moment now, it is too much. Okay, that's my two questions. Thank you so much.
Thank you for your question. Who wants to go first? Yeah.
Yeah, we'll make sure, investment of data, make sure our internet is good. We'll make sure our infrastructure is good so that we can collect data, because I feel you when you say that it's how important to have data, because we do have a problem with that as well. And I think the state government is working very hard on that to make sure that we have access to data, data center. I think this is all in the pipeline. hopefully, another couple of more years, you might probably will have that. I think above all, of course, when you have all this access, I think it will make us easier, especially, researcher to do that, and also for the government to make decision that is data driven.
All right, Tan Sri?
No, I think if I get a question correct, I mean, to me, your obligation as a leader is to make decisions based on all available information, analyzed properly at that point in time. So therefore, your obligation is to source all that information and analyze it correctly. So therefore, you must use whatever technology is available currently for that. And I agree that at the moment there's this information overload, and how do you filter out what is almost what is fake, what is real, what is necessary, what is not. I mean, that's a huge challenge for today's generation of leaders, right? So in some ways, I'm actually glad I'm not running CIMB anymore, because the leadership job today is so much more, so much tougher. But then the flip side is there's also the good things about technology that we need to embrace. I was talking to Anthony Tan of Grab, and he just got these glasses where literally he can just look at someone and the glasses will tell him who that person is, what their CV is. Oh, wow. Yeah, which actually is fantastic, but it also means that I don't need to learn your name, Daphne.
So it just goes with it's scary at the same time. It does help. It just depends on how you use or abuse the technology given. Everyone's talking about, you kept on saying about ChatGPT. It's not ChatGPT, but I personally like it because it just helps me out. But of course, you're not going to be dependent on it wholeheartedly, and you've got to personalize it. Anyone? I think there was one more question, or do we have no more? We're good? We're wrapping up? Yeah? All right. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to conclude our panel discussion. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for the insightful, it went round and round a bit, but essentially I hope that it was beneficial to our audience here. Ladies and gentlemen, leadership is not just a title, it is a lifestyle. You all have and can be a different, make a difference in whatever you do. It's not just you having to own a title or position. Leaders do make mistakes, but it's how you grow from it that makes or breaks you. It's also about not promoting somebody too fast, allow them to have that room for growth. What else were some of the takeaways that I learned from the both of you? And that at the end of the day, we really do need to collectively work together to be able to create a better Malaysia together, all right? So we're looking forward to that book, to read all these 12 chapters, to see how we can contribute in our small ways. Thank you once again, gentlemen. Thank you, Dr. Firdausi, and a big round of applause also to Sri Nazir Razak. And with that, I'm going to hand over the mic back over to Aina, right? Over to you.